Okay, so just continuing on with editing geometry. So last time we went to geometry, dragged in one of these boxes, and we learned how to modify this into something else with the geometry editing. Okay, and we worked out the best way to resize things to keep it optimized for textures and things like that. So this is again just another step forward with that. So this box here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create something like a room that we can walk into, okay? Whereas before it was just an object that you could walk around, I guess. So if I do what I did before, just to scale it up, about that size, and then select the top. Oops, sorry, remember if you want to do that, go to geometry editing, select the top, and make it a bit higher. Okay, so I've got this big kind of box here, which I want this to be a sort of building or room that I could walk into. Okay, so I need to have like a cutout of this to create a kind of archway. So what I'm going to do is come out of editing, and I'm going to create another box here. Okay, and this essentially is going to become a tool to cut out of this box. Okay, so this box is going to be used to cut something out of this one. So if I just move this along and intersect it, and then your brush settings here, where it says additive, change that to subtractive, and you'll immediately see that it has cut out a section of the other box. Okay, and if I make that like wider, you can see, make it higher, that it can cut out of things like that. So you could use that to edit geometry if you wanted to do it in that way. But what we need to do is we need to make this box something that we can walk inside. Okay, so I'm just going to delete that one that I made, select this one, and in the brush settings where I was before, you can see there's a tick box that says hollow. Now if I turn that on, first thing it's done is it's reset itself, so it's removed the geometry editing that I did when I lifted that up. Okay, so just bear in mind that if you want it to be hollow, you need to do that. You need to turn that setting on before you start doing any geometry editing. Otherwise, it's gonna, won't be able to calculate it, so it just reverts back to how it was. So now I can go into geometry editing, lift that back up, and I can get the other box again, intersect it there, and change that to subtractive. And you can see now that I can actually get inside here. What's actually happened is that surface isn't the same. Let me just undo. It's going to go back to where I was here. Okay, so when I ticked hollow and then I went into geometry editing, it only kept this section hollow, didn't make the whole thing hollow, which is annoying, but that's fine. So rather than go into geometry editing, I'll change the height here. Okay, which is fine. So what you'll also notice that when you've got it hollow, you can change the wall thickness. So I'm going to turn that up to about 30. Okay, and go to geometry, get this box into here, intersect it, and subtractive. Okay, so now if you go into here, you can see the whole thing is hollowed out. All right, so anything you want to make hollow like that, just make sure essentially you don't use any of the geometry editing. You just build it from the original box. Okay, just bear that in mind. Still a little bit on the floor there, so I'm going to move that down. Okay, then you can just essentially change the size of this shape. So however big you want that cutout section to be. Okay, and if I go to play, you can see there's this big room and it's got this big cutout section in it. And now I can go into here, and obviously everything will be responsive with those walls. Okay, so you can see the wall thickness there. If you want to edit that and make it thicker, go back to the brush settings and turn that up. Okay, so again, that's something else that you can use to help with geometry editing. So, which essentially is changing this from additive to subtractive with another object that's kind of like a cutter tool cutting out of the surface that you've got. You can also change the brush shape as well. If you wanted to cut out a different kind of shape, if you really wanted to. But they are only going to be the shapes that we already have within the game. Okay. Again, essentially, if you're working with another 3D modeling package, you could create custom things. But we're not going to go down that road due to time constraints. So we just have to stick with what we have. Okay, so again, you are only going to be able to create fairly kind of boxy models, I suppose, for your game. But for what we're doing, that's absolutely fine. If you wanted to create all these sort of much more fancy 3D models, again, they're going to be done in a separate package, and then those models are then imported into Unreal Engine. Okay, but we'll see how much time we've got left in the year and see how far we can get and see if we can get on to making something a bit more more advanced. But for what we're going to do, this is absolutely fine. So as I said, what I want you to do now is just keep practicing with creating geometry. Make yourself like perhaps a little level design within this space. Whatever you want to do. You can also add in from basic, you could add in those cubes again if you wanted to. There's the lights that you can add in. I would only worry about using a point light at the moment. And there's other things in here that we haven't done, so there's like stairs and things, which you can add in. Spiral staircases, all sorts of things that you can add in and customize. Let me just check to see if you can actually walk up them. Yeah, you can. That's fine. Okay, so you can just sort of mess around with that, adding textures to them from the material library of all the preset materials that we've got. Some of them are pretty interesting. That kind of sci-fi look about them. Other ones are pretty standard, like grass and bricks and things. But just create something interesting with practicing. And then what I want you to do is do a screenshot of what you've created. Okay, so just take a screenshot of your level, and I want you to share that on Teams with the rest of the group so I can see what everyone's done. Okay, before we move on to the next bit. All right. Just before I finish, actually, one other thing I wanted to show you before we do that, especially with lights. If I did drag in a light here, maybe I wanted it inside. There are some things you can change in terms of the effects on the lights. So if I go over to the Details tab for the light, you've got some other things here. So you've got like the intensity, so you can change the brightness of it, and also the color. So if I wanted that to be like blue, you can do that. And the radius of effect of the light and things like that as well. So you can kind of play around with that to create kind of a, set the scene a bit more. The sky you can edit. I'm not going to, perhaps won't go into that too far at the moment because I don't want to do too much in one go. But what you'll notice obviously is when you do add lights, you've got the lighting needs to be rebuilt. Sort of error message there. So again, like we did before, you just go to the little drop down next to build and select build lighting only, and it will build all the lighting for you. Okay. Don't worry about building geometry so much. That all kind of gets done when you actually export the game. So really the only thing you need to worry about building is the lighting only. If you just click the build button, it would build everything and it would take a lot longer. So just worry about the lighting for now. I think that should be about it. That should give you quite a lot to go off to create something anyway. All right,